This is the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast, where we spread awareness for men's mental health and spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. Be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify. New episodes drop weekly. This is the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast, and I'm your host, Steve. Tonight, I am joined by Mark Andrew. He is a firefighter, paramedic, and also a company officer. He's here tonight to talk about his book that's coming out soon called Leading Through the Heat. He's going to share his testimony. We're going to talk about life in the fire service and also mental health in the first responder role. Mark, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight, man. It's a pleasure sitting down with you.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, man. So let's kind of start from the beginning. I like to ask guests when they come on to kind of start out with, their childhood, where they're from, and then kind of work our way to where we are, with your fire career in the book.
Well, I worked for the city of Dearborn, and we're Detroit's western border. I want to say fourth largest city in our state in square mileage. I believe it's the third in population. So it's a suburb. It's for sure a suburb, but it is one of the bigger ones. And so we've got a lot of suburbs might have one or two stations. We have 5. So we have a big city feel to what we do, even though we definitely are a suburb. I coincidentally grew up in Dearborn as well. Lived here through childhood and went to high school here. And this was the city that hired me. Totally coincidental. Back in the 90s, I would have gone anywhere that offered me a job. The landscape was way different. Back then, departments only wanted a fire academy graduate certificate and basic EMT license, which is about a school semester with clinical time, maybe about a year. And now we're in a place where we want paramedic licenses, and those are harder to get. It's more of a time commitment. It's about from basic to paramedic to clinical time to the prereqs you got to take before. In a community college, paramedic's about a 3-year commitment. So it has whittled the job pool down a lot over the 2000s. And once we hit the 2020s, we now started to see that Gen Z population not want to go into labor, the labor sector. And so now we're down to just a few applicants. But man, back in the 90s, we'd fill up a high school gym with applicants. Was it the same experience for you going into law enforcement?
Well, so in my state here in Tennessee, it really depended. It depended on the department size. So I was hired on at a department that paid for us to go to the state academy, and they had their own in-house academy. But a lot of the smaller departments, you had to be post-certified, which is 12 weeks at the state training center. It's $2,500, and a lot of guys would be coming out of pocket to go do that. Then they would try to find a job. But the fire service here, most of the departments, you have to do, it's like a volunteer department, and you volunteer, get your certifications, your EMT, and then you go apply. In my opinion, it's way harder to become a firefighter, at least in my town, than it is a police officer.
It's similar to Michigan.
They make more
as well.
money too.
Yeah, similar, very similar to Michigan. A lot of the police departments will send applicants to a police academy, even though it's just at a local community college.
Yeah.
Which I've always found odd. In the fire service, you've got to have that academy graduate certificate and your paramedic license in hand just to pick up the application from human resources. So we're hiring people decently road ready. They need to adapt and learn the intricacies of whatever department hires them. But a lot of the time that work you're doing before at the volunteer, at the private ambulance, at the paid on call department, those are excellent ways to build your resume and develop those job skills for when a full-time fire department makes the call.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know there's a couple, I don't know if you're familiar with the Nashville area, but the Metro Fire Department, they will send you to the fire academy off the street. At least they used to. And
I would assume Nashville runs like a big city does.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Then there's another town called Murfreesboro, which is where I went to college and grew up. They're the same way. They will send you to the academy right off the street. But where I live, it's not like that. You've got to already have that experience coming in and the certification. So it is
Yeah.
a little different than
In
law
our
enforcement.
area, Detroit is the only one that still has an in-house academy, but you'll
Okay.
see that in Detroit, Chicago, New York, Philly, DC, Nashville, Houston, because those big cities have such an intricate, I guess, neighborhood and way of doing things and deployment of rigs that it's important to them to teach you their way. And so,
Gotcha.
yeah, most big cities, you go to an academy class of 30 people, and
Okay.
then that class graduates, and those are your academy brothers and sisters for the remainder of your career. In the suburbs, they just don't have the wherewithal to put on a full academy class, so they just ask the applicants to buck up the money and do it yourself.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
What
but it
what
works in the suburbs though.
what made you choose the fire service? Did you have family members that were firefighters and that kind of lead you into that career path?
Yes, I did. My father actually was a firefighter for the same department,
Mm,
and once again, it was a coincidence that this is the department that hired me. It was 7 years of bouncing around town after town, applying and testing before Dearborn called. Uh, uh, so I would have gone anywhere. I'm so fortunate that they called. One, I enjoy working at the same department my dad did because that was kind of the upbringing I had and what I'd learned, and it was rewarding to carry on those traditions another generation
did you work at the same time as your father then at the same
for
department?
1 year. Yep. So
How was that? Was that weird?
yes, I figured out probably on day two that the department that he's described to me for the entirety of my life is not going to be my experience. We were going
Oh,
on
wow.
medical calls left and right,
Yeah.
um, uh, way more training, way more paperwork. The standards were way different. We had just moved from basic to paramedic, advanced life support care. So the ambulances are stocked different. The treatment on the scene is different. There's no more just load and go and do it at the hospital. We we were now bringing the emergency room to the patient.
Oh,
Plus,
wow.
the call volume had quintupled from when he was, say, even in the middle of his career. They're doing 5,000 runs or 1,000 runs, and we're doing 10,000 shortly after I came on. And so I figured out right away that the department he's been describing about, oh, we're going to cook these meals and we're going to go to this warehouse fire and we're going to uh, work on Joe's boat in our downtime. Yeah, those days were long gone.
Hmm. Is that just because of population boom or
Yeah, population boom. People became more comfortable using 911 for a lot of their medical care. The population aged. So seniors just need to reach out. And we were so happy that we could develop a really high performing EMS department to provide for them.
at the bigger departments, do they kinda split the responsibilities? Like, say you go into Detroit Fire, could you just say, "Hey, I really just wanna work fires versus medical," or do you have to be cross-trained in everything and just expect to
Up
get those
until a year
calls?
ago, yes, they
Okay.
were one of the last holdouts in the nation of big city departments that you hired onto EMS, you're hired onto fire, and that was your career.
Mm, okay.
Then they had a hard time getting EMTs and paramedics to want to work. Detroit went through the 90s, the most understaffed EMS department in the country, not even close comparison to the second most understaffed. They couldn't put rigs in, they couldn't keep trucks running, they couldn't get people to apply for the job. So, like a city of a comparable size, you know, in the 90s, they still had a million people. I think they're down to 700,000, 650,000 now. But they're still like 120 square miles, comparable size like a Philly uh, or, or like a Baltimore or a Miami. They would have 60 ambulances, and Detroit had maybe 15 to 18. And
Wow.
so it was a very hard job. But to
Wow.
sweeten it, they started promising the paramedics, hey, you could transfer over to fire the next academy class. And so they
Oh, okay.
started getting more applicants. And then those promises never came to fruition. They would say, "Oh,
Man,
we're really
dang.
short.
That's dirty, man.
So I
That's
tell you what,
dirty.
hang on another year and we'll move you over to fire." Because on the
Wow.
fire side, it was a great job. It's
Yeah.
one of the busiest fire departments in the country for structure fires. Um, I think Baltimore is kind of beating them out right now, but for the 90s and first part of in the 2000 up to like 2010, you they were getting upwards of you want to count cars, dumpsters, along with houses and garages, easily 50 fires a day. Um,
Kidding.
yes, they were getting more than New York City, and that's with
Man,
all 5 boroughs. Um,
jeez.
so it was a fun job. You're going to fires all the time, and
Yeah.
you're in one of the most famous departments in the country, and you didn't have to do medical runs, and
Yeah.
you yeah, you and uh, then they went through a bankruptcy, cleaned up some finances, and started making a lot of improvements. They started hiring more firefighters. They started hiring more EMTs and paramedics. They started getting grants for more rigs. And so the job got a little easier. They also started tearing down a lot of abandoned houses. In fact, they had more abandoned houses than any suburb in this area had houses. And not just vacant, no renters. Like there's no paper trail to who the owner is.
Wow.
Yeah, just they've been empty shells and sometimes even drug houses for 20 years. And so um the as they're tearing those houses down, then the fire volume goes down. And so Detroit about 7, 8 years ago decided, hey, let's become medical first responders. We're going to let the engines help out the ambulance when they're short or if it's a really bad run, which every other department of the country had been doing for 15, 20 years. And so they start doing that. They're hiring medics and they're hiring firefighters and they're telling the medics, hey, we're going to cross train and we're going to be this combined department. And then that just was a hard hump to get over. And the labor contract just last year actually has that. So when you hire on, you got to do your first 6 months on the EMS side. You learn your medic skills, you learn your EMT skills, and then you'll work half your time in the medic, then half the time in the fire after a few months. But now, when you're going on those medical runs on the fire truck, you've now got that experience of doing it on an ambulance. So the medics on the engine or the basic EMTs on the engine are not just doing basic first aid. They're actually trained, skilled people providing really good care for their citizens. So it's been a huge improvement for them.
Yeah, I
So
bet.
now in the last year, Detroit is a little bit cross trained, but that's really the only last year or two. The majority of the department is still just fire only.
Okay. What do you enjoy better, the medical side or the fire side?
Easily the fire side, but I do enjoy the medical. The problem with the medical is um, going to gunshots and stabs and car rollovers and traumas are just as exciting as the fires. And it's so rewarding to be there when somebody's really, really hurt. Grandma's
Yeah.
having a heart attack, and I'm going to give some nitroglycerin and start an IV and give some morphine. And we're going to really make a difference visible in front of her eyes. It's such a great, rewarding job, but you have to slog through dozens and dozens a day of non-emergent calls, running on the same homeless guy 3 times a day, going back to the nursing home because they just have no other way to get their people for medical
Yeah.
appointments. So they're coming up with minor medical complaints to just get 911 to take them. And so you put up with a lot of monotony to get to the exciting stuff. So in our service, everybody likes doing the fires.
Okay. That and when I was looking at, first responder jobs, I mean, I was really interested in fire, but I didn't want any part of the medical, and that was the reason I
Mhm.
didn't pursue it because I
Right.
just did not wanna deal with that. I
Exactly. Yeah. And a
didn't
lot
want
of
any
people
part of
don't.
it. Yeah, I didn't
Exactly,
want
and not only that, I've met a lot of people that just went into other careers because the paramedic class is so difficult or the
mm,
national exam is so difficult that just after a couple of failed attempts, they've just changed careers.
that makes
So
sense. Yeah, that makes
yeah, it
sense.
it does happen.
Well, so you're let's talk about, kinda your book a little bit and how it relates to your career because it's really there's a lot about leadership and, we talk about leadership a lot on this podcast, not only from a job perspective, but as a man, as a dad, as a leader in the family or wherever out in the world and in faith. Let's kind of I want to hear your thoughts on leadership, and then I want to tie faith into that as we kind of progress into the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I figured out once I had about a year to 2 years on that I wanted to go the promotional path to company officer. Lieutenant, just that looked like the gig. You're on the
Mhm,
engine because we have captains on ladder trucks in a lot of our stations. And being on that busy engine, being the lieutenant, you're the first line supervisor, but I've got a captain above me. So I'm the first point of contact if the crew has a problem, wants to reach out, looking for somebody to be a mentor or a coach, um, without having that full separation of maybe a captain through lieutenant through a few engineers. There's a little bit of a distance with the captain and the junior guys.
mhm.
And so for me, I wanted to be a company officer early on. I really figured out that that was the career path I wanted. I didn't know if I was going to make it, but I certainly started preparing myself for it. And then I found myself talking, not only taking formal classes, but the most important part was actually just talking with my peers. And we would just go to a call. And then I would say, hey, that was kind of messed up. Why didn't we do this or this? Or why was that boss yelling at us in the middle of the street? Or why do we do it this way? Or I would say, hey, this call went really well. And then I realized after talking to colleagues that are really smart firefighters, I had for years been keeping this mental list of notes of attributes that I didn't like or did like and wanted to emulate. And uh, so I knew early on I wanted to be an officer. And then I kind of figured out I was getting more ready for it. The more calls I would go on, the more I would observe other leaders, both positive and negative.
Um, so in your words, why is presence more effective than micromanagement when under pressure?
It's huge. Uh, a downside to the fire service that you don't see in law enforcement. In law enforcement, when you're the crew leader or the team leader or the road sergeant, you're still on the road being the sergeant. The supervisor in the fire station, between calls, if you were so inclined, you could delegate a lot of your job to the junior people. And some of our stations have private rooms for the officers.
Wow.
So the two stations I worked as an officer at did not. I found that helped me a lot. Getting rid of
Yeah.
that temptation to shut myself away from the
Mhm.
team really helped me. It made me want to be out there. Now, I like being busy. I would rather be going on calls than sitting around the station.
Mhm.
When we have a project, I enjoy being involved. When we have a training, I enjoy being there with the crew and with the team and going through what they go through. But in that, so that presence was easy for me when I transitioned to lieutenant. What was hard was not overcooking that and then micromanaging. That was a skill I had to practice and learn. Um, because it's one thing on a scene to just start doing the patient assessment or to start the IV. It was another for me to step back
Mhm.
and say nothing and just watch the crew treat this medical patient. And then if it's critical, then I'll grab one of the many tasks that need to be done. If I feel they're maybe missing something, I'll throw an idea out. Hey, have we thought about this?
Mhm.
And then they'll give me some feedback and maybe they're right and I misjudged something, or maybe they were just young and missed this one patient assessment thing and didn't think about it. So I found that even when you have to manage, you don't have to micromanage, and that was a
Mhm.
skill that took me a couple of years as an officer to hone when to speak up and when to be a part of things. But when
Mhm.
I do delegate, what I learned though was I'm not only not micromanaging, I'm also leaving time for myself to do my actual assigned duties. So I'm not getting mired down in everything, but I'm also providing an opportunity for the senior firefighters to lead a project in my absence. So
Mhm.
they now get that opportunity to develop their leadership skills.
Let me ask you this, because this is something I brought up when Justin and I did our show. So when I was in the Navy, I was a commissioned officer, and in the military, obviously the rank structure is really important. You don't address people by their first names, use the rank. When I got into law enforcement, I kind of had the mindset to keep the supervisors at bay and kind of stay away from them. And they were there if you needed them, respected them. But I stayed with more of the grunts, like the patrol officers. But what I saw in the department was a lot of people, and they use the term down here in the South, the good old boy network. Um, Guys would be smoking and joking with a sergeant or a lieutenant, and we didn't have captains. We just had sergeants and lieutenants. But I never understood that, and it made me uncomfortable because I didn't want to be disrespectful, but I also wanted to look at the chain of command and say, okay, that guy's a supervisor. I don't need to be tight with him because I need to keep him at a distance. From your experience, Mark, in leadership, how was it in your crews, and how did your guys or girls kind of see you in the leadership role? Was kind of your experience, or what was it like?
Yeah, I would say the fire service is a little bit different because we all live in the same building for the day
Okay. Yeah.
and we eat our meals together. We don't have an officer's mess. And not only that, I don't know what all departments are like, but I know our police department has two labor unions. They've got one for supervisors and one for patrol. We are all in the same labor union. So it's a double edged sword. One, it encourages a healthy dialogue, a friendship of people. There's an open communication up and down the chain of command. Uh, we do get along. The downside is there are sometimes officers that want to be everybody's friend. And to me, that's just death as a leader. If
Yeah.
you became a boss, so you could be everybody's buddy, you're not helping them out. And so finding that middle ground is challenging in the fire service because we'll go to a social event where our labor union has a 501c3 successful charity, so we'll put on a charity function, and then it inevitably after the charitable function ends up at a social event at a local establishment, and it's nice to be able to see people out of work and to unwind and be seen as a human and connect with people. But I've also seen some leaders then once again overcook it. And then there's this scene as the party guy and everybody's buddy. And
Yeah.
it's hard to then all of a sudden turn that back on when you're on duty the next day. So
Hmm.
I've been able to take the job seriously enough to the point of when we go to that golf outing, people are still calling me by my rank on my day off.
Mm.
And I will tell the guys, hey, we're on the golf course. This isn't the Marine Corps. You could use my first name. They
Yeah.
would say, "Oh, I can't do it. I can't do it." I said, "Why?" He
Yeah.
said, "Because you just carry yourself um, like somebody who wants to lead people." And so sometimes it was just subconscious. I wasn't even doing it, but they said,
Yeah.
you take the job seriously enough to where I can't turn it off."
You know what though? I think that says a lot about you, and I respect that a lot. I mean, just the fact that your crew even said that to you on a golf course, that just to me says what kind of leader you are. Obviously, they respect you.
Yeah, and we've
You
got a
know.
couple of really good officers that are there right now, and I've had the same conversation with them, and I've seen the same thing.
Yeah.
We got a captain on a ladder, station 4 named Ken, and he is the most down to earth guy. He is so much fun to hang out with. He is incredibly smart. He is our blue collar street smart officer type. He is not the book smart young hotshot. He's a guy that you could tell uh, grew up on the streets, working labor jobs since he was young, and he brings such expertise to the job that even though he is one of the most fun people to hang out with, um, everybody calls him captain because they see that seriousness he brings. when he's there in the station or when he's at the fire or when he's at the medical run. So that he's found a really nice balance to it as well.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. I didn't see a lot of that. I saw more of the,
Mhm.
the smoking and joking side.
Yeah.
So it was,
I did see a
but
lot of that coming up, to the point of, our officer positions have a competitive exam and an interview, whereas the first few promotions are pass fail. When I first came on, it was common that if, you and the chief hung out, your scores would be higher. If you
mhm,
and, one of the chiefs on the board, uh, he did siding on the side, aluminum siding on the side, and then you were one of his helpers. You guys are out there pounding nails on your days off. All of a sudden, this dude's scores are really high. So
yeah.
I did see that coming up, and I saw the downside of the buddyism that can happen.
Yeah, I'm sure that's probably across the board. At least it used to be in a lot of departments. What was the hardest transition for you from basically doing the work and then going into leadership? Was it kind of stepping back like you mentioned earlier and kind of waiting to see if you need to say something and watch what they're doing, or would you say that was the most
So a
challenging
couple of
part?
things. One's stepping back, observing, watching, knowing when to put myself into a situation that took a lot of practice, and I developed the confidence to where, um, say, we go on a call and I tell the ambulance crew with the brand new guy on it, hey, can you raise a ladder off the Charlie side of the house? And then I notice it takes them way too long. And their carry of the ladder was uncoordinated. One guy forgot a tool. They'd go back to the rig. And then I'm looking at the roof and nobody's up there. And so I developed the confidence to be able to say to the team, and then I would just go right to the two senior firefighters and I would say, hey, I noticed uh, we could hone that ladder skill a little bit. I think the guy needs a little bit of attention. Uh, and then inevitably, through the foundation of that type of communication and that type of groundwork and that type of learning how to delegate, I would already had a relationship with the senior guys and they would say that we saw the same thing. I already know exactly what I want to do. And I would say, great. What do you got in mind? He goes, I know this ladder exercise. It's going to work really well. So after lunch, we're going to take the kid out and we're going to be in the parking lot and I'm going to run through this exercise. Then I could say, do you need me to get involved in any way? And they'd say, no, Cap, we got it. And then
Yeah,
I, with all the confidence in the world, would not go out there and would not only not micromanage, I won't even watch them do it. I would just assume
yeah,
it's going to get done. But I did find out that if you're going to delegate, a way to be present is the follow up after. So then I would wait until 3 hours later and I would say, so Brian, so Ollie, so Marcus, how did that project turn out? And they would say, we did this, this, and this. We're going to follow up with that tomorrow, but we're making improvements. I would say, great. That's all I need to know. So they now know I'm just not putting it on them, that I'm empowering them to develop their own teaching and leadership skills, but I care enough to know what the outcome was.
right. Well, let's so since we're talking about leadership and you brought this up off air with the episode when I had Dr. Jenna on, let's talk about the mental health side
Absolutely.
in first responders, especially in the fire side of the house. What is your take on is coming up through the ranks and then getting into a leadership position? What was the stance on mental health? If you went on a really just bad call, and obviously there's going to be trauma involved with the officers there, the firefighters there. How how was that handled? Was it different in maybe in the beginning of your career than it is
Absolutely.
now?
It was different.
Okay, I figured
Yeah.
it probably was.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the first maybe 2 years I hired on, there was some talk in uh, some of the academies and classes and circles of training for dealing with stress. But for the first couple of years I was there was just the flyer for an EAP program, emergency
Okay.
assistance program, and a
Yep.
phone number. And they told us, you ever want somebody to talk to, just call that number. It's all covered by the city, won't cost you a dime. And then was never brought up again. And then we had a couple of critical runs. So they said, hey, we're going to do 90s style what they called critical incident stress debriefing. And this was a mandatory meeting of everybody that's on the run with not only their bosses, with the junior people that are below them, and a healthcare professional from the EAP place who would lead a mandatory discussion where you were forced to have to then share your thoughts. We found out that that didn't really work well. It took us about 10 years to put that model behind us. And what we're doing now is what we call peer support. And they've made a ton of strides. And even the peer support they started with, they've adapted as they're getting more information and feedback and data. So I give them so much credit for what they do. Um, and not that we always agree with everything, because I know that part of a peer support that works well for me is you were taught, here's the peer support team, here's all their personal phone numbers, and if you would like to reach out to a peer and talk confidentially, here's how you do it. So, but it was up to the person that would call that peer when they were ready to talk, because that was the problem with the critical incident stress debrief. It was immediately right after the run, and a lot of the times we would try to tell these people, "I'm fine talking about this poor child who died. I just would choose to not relive it right now. Can you give me a
Right.
day?" And so,
Right.
what peer support's done now is they make themselves available, but they don't have forced meetings with healthcare professionals and all your bosses in the room. And it's been a ton better, and they've made tons of strides with it.
So you feel like there's more of an open-mindedness with mental health
Very
nowadays?
much.
Good,
When we had a
good.
first responder uh, in our city die in the line last year, um, the city offered everybody on the crew that responded to him and took him to the hospital um, the rest of the day off without using your own sick time. We're just going to just grant you leave, and we'll code it in payroll so you're not getting dinged your sick time, your vacation time. We would just prefer if everybody just went home, spend some time with your family, talk
Yeah.
to some friends if you want to, um, and we will just call in the overtime to backfill. And so that was really big on the city's part to know I might not be getting the best of these people if I keep them here for the next 18 hours.
Yeah, that is big. Yeah, that's really big. What about the self-sabotage piece? Have you seen a lot of that, especially in a leadership role with, some of your subordinates? Have you seen a lot of that?
Yes, I absolutely would agree with your prior guest. Jenna Kaiser, I believe is her name.
Mhm. Yep.
And she talked about what she saw with a lot of self sabotage. And I can't say it's exclusively um, addiction or drugs and alcohol. A lot of the times, people dealing with stressors, whether it was a bad run, more times or not, it's just the schedule, the hours, and stress at home. Um, we've seen them self sabotage through just poor work habits. So I've got a person I know he's really good, but I could tell something's going on. And I could tell because as a supervisor, I'm getting out there and I'm paying attention and I'm talking to people and I'm observing people on runs. Then on another topic, nothing bothered me more as a supervisor or as a firefighter coming up is when a supervisor would say, when something blows up, well, how come nobody told me this was going on? Well, it's because you were in your office for the last 9 months, and of course you don't know what's going on. You only come out when dinner's ready. And so, by watching and observing, I could see so and so. He's late once in a while. So and so he's taken longer to get on the ambulance and get out the door. Um, he's forgetting routine tasks, and so I'll see that sabotage happen, even if it's just subconsciously through work habits. Um, I can't say I've dealt with a lot that are truly, truly addictions like Jenna was talking about.
Well, and it's really cool that you care so much about your teammates and that you're humble enough to really, like, wanna be there for them and care about them versus just kinda staying away, and then, like you just said, the other guy, like, "Well, what's going on? What happened?" And it's cool to see that, especially a leader to be that way, 'cause,
Right.
we all have different experiences
Mhm.
and job roles and things, but it's just really refreshing to hear your perspective being so high up the chain of command to look at it through that lens.
Yeah, and I talk about that in a completely different topic in the book about leaders that let their junior people take the blame for something.
Right.
So not to get off, not to just the self sabotage or the people dealing with issues. Uh, uh, as a leader, you get the bigger badge, so it's a bigger shield. You got to get out in
Hmm.
front of these problems, and if the boss has a problem, you stand in front of that guy, and you go in the chief's office and you take it, and
Hmm.
then you tell the chief, "I got it, boss. I'm going to go talk with him right now. We're going to have a sit down. This is handled." So it helps out the morale because now the crew sees you got their back. Two,
Hmm.
this person's not going to get worse because now the discipline is making him spiral. And I could never figure out when I was coming up why, not a lot, almost all the bosses were great, but every once in a while I would see a boss who would say, "Well, I'm not going in the office for you. I'm not taking the blame for this. I'm not taking the hit." And I could never wrap my brain around that. What are they going to do? I got 20 years out. I'm an officer. They put a letter in my file. Why were they
Yeah.
afraid of that?
Yeah.
And so I figured out early on if there's problems, somebody on the crew's having a problem. They made a mistake on a run. They're dealing with stress at home. I got to get out in front of that. I'm
Hmm.
not going to let the chief yell at my guy. He's going to yell at me, and then I'll handle it professionally.
How did you develop that? Was that something that you learned from your father, or did you just kind of, like you mentioned earlier,
Oh,
you kind of observed coming
I
up
I
through
learned it
those?
right in the moment.
Okay.
I had a boss who was delegated a task, and so he delegates it to me. Not a problem. I'm he knows I'm testing to be a lieutenant. I've got it. I've got 10 years on, um, maybe like 8 or 9 years on, and I'm a senior firefighter. So we do this task, and it totally gets botched, and nothing's working out. And then I do this deep dive. Where did this project go wrong? And then I looked and I found it. I said, "Oh my gosh, there it is. I see the problem. All right, if I change the computer program to do this instead of that, this problem won't happen again." Well, unfortunately, that glass half full mindset was not shared by our battalion chief. And he is furious and just wants to yell at somebody for this botched project. So he calls the station, and I happen to have been in the room doing a report, and the lieutenant answers the phone. He goes, "Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let me get him for you, chief." And then as he's handing me the phone, I could hear the chief yelling at me before the phone even gets to me. And I'm staring at him in the moment. Go, what are you giving me the phone for? Yes,
Yeah.
sir, sir. Of course, sir. Won't happen again, sir. Very sorry, sir, 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 sir. And I covered up the phone. And, "Gary, what the hell are you doing? This is your phone call. Why are you not taking this call?" He goes, "What? It was your screw up. What do you want me to do?" "I'm going to take the phone call. The chain of command goes up and
Yeah.
down equally. It's not just for me calling you by your rank. It means a lot more than that." He goes, "I don't know what you're talking about." And then that was it. I just figured out, oh my gosh, if I'm a lieutenant, I am always going to take that phone call. I'm never going to do this to another person. And
Yeah.
I sat there for 5 minutes going, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir, 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 sir." And I just, oh my God, what is this guy afraid of? So the chief yells at him for 2 to 3 minutes. So what? Who cares?
Right.
Nothing's going to happen. But he was so afraid. I just couldn't wrap my head around what he was afraid of.
How has faith played a role in your life personally and in your role as a firefighter?
We live in an interesting city, Dearborn. We're half Muslim and half a few other religions, mostly Christian based. I grew up Catholic, and what I learned early on was we absolutely are a town of faith, a town of belief, and belief that there is a higher power and there's a greater purpose to what we do. And having that belief, regardless of what religion our patient was, or the family was, or the people we're dealing with were, I found that gave me a lot of comfort Um, so, uh, talking about dealing with stress on the job, uh, knowing that there's a comfort to what we provide people in tragedy is how I've always gotten through a lot of stress on the job. So even though a tragedy happened to whatever family member and there wasn't a positive outcome, I've always taken so much pride in knowing that even though it's hard to watch, um, the family going forward will always know everything that could have been done was done. And so even though it's hard to look at and be there in the moment, um, that peace of mind we're giving them is providing them that closure. They now know we worked our butts off for a half an hour to save their family member. And they could see the stress on our faces. And so knowing that we're giving them that comfort at the during a tragedy really meant so much to me, that I just twisted it to use as my motivation to keep going forward when tragedies did happen. Um, Another thing that we see a lot in the fire service is we do deal with death, and very rarely are they horrible tragedies. There's just a lot of older people or people dealing with disease processes, and uh, so you get a lot of calls for CPRs. What's different about the modern paramedicine is when I first came on, it was uh, take everybody to the hospital. We're going to dump a bunch of epinephrine in you, and then if we get a pulse back, um, a lot of the times um, it's a byproduct of the huge amounts of epinephrine we were giving, and the family would just pull the plug the next day. Once we get to the early to mid 2000s, more data is coming out about the survivability of cardiac arrest based on disease process, downtime, and our local medical protocols then changed based on those national standards to say that we can't take people to the hospital outside of trauma or a pediatric run or a hypothermia, something that is possibly reversible. But your run of the mill person who's reached the end of life, they don't want us transporting people in flat lines or asystole anymore. So if we put them on an EKG, we can't transport a flat line. They want us to work the patient for 30 minutes, document all of the advanced treatments we're bringing. We bring everything in the emergency room to the patient, all the cardiac drugs, the IVs. Uh, I could decompress chests. I could put intubation tubes into their lungs. So we're getting people on ventilators. We're manual ventilators. And we're doing everything the ER is going to do in terms of the American Heart Association standard of care. And if we, after 30 minutes, they're still on a flat line and there has been no signs of life, the hospitals now want us to call them and then they will decide, all right, transport, or I'm going to issue you a time of death. So the first couple of years, people were a little taken aback. What do you mean you're going to take them to the hospital? We
Yeah.
don't want grandma to die here on the couch. But we found ourselves in a place now where we got to allow those family members to, within reason, observe the efforts, the life-saving efforts. I've been on living room floors where I've encouraged family members to come and kneel next to me as I'm squeezing the bag and we're working on the chest and we're shocking. And they'll just say the most beautiful, comforting words as this person is passing away. And so, yeah, seeing the faith, seeing the belief that there is an afterlife really made a difference.
Have you had moments where you've really felt God with you while you were in kind of the heat of a call and trying to resuscitate someone like that?
I can't say me personally, but I've heard so much anecdotal evidence from my brothers. Um, the one common one I would see, and I wouldn't say it's as where I felt it as much as feeling God, but feeling the person willing to go home to God. And the common, I'm sorry to do this, my God. Um,
Take your time. Take your time.
yeah, the common story is somebody's dying of cancer. and they're in the hospital and they say, this is not working out. I'd rather just go home. So they've been battling this for 6 months. The doctors say, all right, well, it's not looking good. We're going to send a hospice nurse over. And, we don't know. It's not an exact science, but they'll tell the family it could be a couple of weeks before he goes. The family will have the person moved back to the home, and inevitably they'll put a hospital bed in, say, like a den, and it'll be a nice open area. And later on that night, the person will just kind of drift away and pass away. So we'll come and we'll say, what's going on? They say, well, it's a hospice death, but can you bring him back? Can you do something? We want everything done. And we keep saying, well, I can, but it's difficult when it's hospice, because once you start transporting hospice patients, they kind of drop you out of the program. And two, are you sure this is what his wishes are? Well, no, his wishes were to go peacefully. He doesn't want to be on a ventilator. But then they would say, but the doctor told us we would have 2 weeks with them. And I said, yeah, but it's an inexact science. And they said, but I don't understand how this could happen. And so a couple of times I would say to this woman, here, come and sit with me. What's he look at that? And then I'm so sorry, Steve.
No, take your time, Mark. It's okay. It's okay.
She would say, he's looking at his mantle. And there's all the kids' pictures,
Damn.
the little league trophies. And I said, yeah, he's home now. He was ready to let go. He just he just wanted to be here. And it's not in the cards for him to wait another 2 weeks. He was ready.
Yeah.
He was mentally ready. I see that so often with the
Yeah.
elderly people. They know when they're ready.
Yeah. That's well, I am so glad that you are at least there with those families for that
I was
moment. I
always
mean,
glad as well. It
yeah,
was
I
one of the
mean,
most
that's
rewarding things we've ever done, to be there at the
and
end of life to provide that comfort.
yeah, and I think Mark, that really just shows, as Christians,
Mm.
love your neighbor. Like
Yeah.
that is that in as an example right there. And the reason I ask you that question about if you felt God, so I had a neighbor back in this was post COVID. COVID was way different down here in Tennessee than probably in Michigan, but it was probably in 21 in February, so it's coming up on the anniversary. I had a neighbor. I was home with my kids one day, and neighbor runs over and says, Terry just had a heart attack." And Terry was a very obese man. He was in his late 60s. And at this point in my life, I'm a business owner. I'm not a police officer. I hadn't done CPR in years. I run over. Long story short, he's in bad shape. My other neighbor was kind of starting to work on him. And anyways, I started taking control of the scene, and um we were on the phone with 911, and they were they were doing their thing, and I started doing CPR. And but I felt this it's weird. It's like you're in a situation where your training takes over, but yet it's like I haven't done this in forever. Like I'm like, "Oh shit." Like I don't know, but I remembered, but I could just feel, and I was in a weird place in my life. I was not walking with the Lord this period in my life, but I could feel God in the room with me, kind of coaching me through it. And I was able to get him back. And then fire shows up, EMS and all those guys, and they get him on the truck. And I thought, all right, good. You know what? He's going to be okay. Well, he had a widowmaker. He got to the
Mhm,
hospital and ended up dying. But
mhm. Yeah, and I feel you. And so often you 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 pile on obesity with a cardiac history and respiratory problems. Um, it is nearly impossible to survive a cardiac arrest. The odds are just stacked against you. So there's a chance he was in God's hands well before
yeah,
you got
definitely.
there.
And there was some peace. on the scene once they load him in the truck, because his wife is there, and of course the cops are trying to interview her, and I pulled them off and was like, hey, give her some space. I mean, her husband's right here, going through this. But yeah, it is it's weird to feel God in kind of those, and I felt him as a police officer, and then I lost a patient in a fire call as a police officer. That's a whole other story.
Mhm.
But so the death that I've experienced in my life has been on medical calls
Ah,
or fire calls,
yeah.
and it's always been kind of a um I have a Holy Spirit in me kind of saying, okay, Steve, go. And I don't hear God all the time like some people do, but it was almost like that gut feeling, like, okay, if I go here, this is not good. I need to redirect and go this way. It's hard to explain it, but I just wanted to hear your take, if because you've dealt with a lot more than I have, obviously, and I didn't know if that was in those moments where you feel like, okay, like, God, I can see God in this, because a lot of folks from my experience that are in first responder jobs, military, they get jaded, and they just look at life through this lens of, everybody's a suspect. The world is evil. It's bad. There's just constant bad shit going on all the time. And it's easy to get that way if you're not careful. But yeah, I was just curious, man. I was just curious if, with your faith and your upbringing, if you kind of felt, God in these calls when you're working.
Yeah, I guess I never framed it like that, but I'm maybe now starting to wonder if I had. I always saw it as more of just a calmness,
Yeah.
when the families could see us doing everything. Because we're gonna work this patient for 30 minutes in their living room, right there on the floor, and we'll see them over the course of a half an hour, watch us work, and they slowly are more at peace. They're coming to terms with it. So
Hmm.
that coming to terms with the inevitability of everybody's death, I found kind of peaceful, uh, uh, because they'll go from uh, very quick stages of grief. How could this happen? And then all the way leading to acceptance in all just a half an hour. They're saying, no, it's okay. Let him go. Because they're now watching us have done everything medically and professionally possible. We were able to perform like a well-oiled machine in a timely manner using the most advanced techniques that we could.
And it's really great to hear that you're able to bring that peace to the family by providing, that level of care, and then also the human side of that,
For
where
sure.
you can comfort them, basically not just being a robot that's coming in to work on. It's a person there, not just another patient.
And I was lucky. So many of our officers at my department are so good at that 5 minute mark, that 15-minute mark, that 20-minute mark, taking a break from the resuscitation team. Say, I'm going to go talk with the family a little bit,
Yeah, that's good.
and just saying, hey, we're doing everything we can. Our treatments are all successfully applied, but he is not responding.
Yeah.
Um, and just having conversations with people.
Hmm.
Once again, it just humanizes the whole aspect of being a first responder in a lot of the public's mind.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Let's shift gears for a little bit, Mark. What was your motivation to write your book?
Um, you mentioned Justin Carter. I was a guest on his podcast, and so I took a few notes and had some talking points, and was on another podcast and added to those talking points. Uh, I on my helmet. In fact, the one here on the right was the one I did. Well, actually, both of them, but the one on the right I had for a couple of fires where I have a GoPro helmet cam.
Oh,
And so
nice.
I started putting it on Instagram, and I got a few national people that would repost and say,
Nice.
"Hey, this is really good stuff. Hey,
Yeah.
we love how calm you talk. This is really good." I said, "Wow, I practiced it for a lot of years." And um, uh, so I'm looking at all these talking points as these podcasters are reaching out to me, and I said, "Wow, this might make a good magazine article." And then I started
Hmm.
thinking, "Well, shoot, I mean, I've written so many articles that I've submitted to Fire Engineering, Firehouse, Journal of Emergency Medicine that never got accepted. almost invariably every time they would say, "Oh, are you from New York?" No, I'm not from New York. You from LA? No. Yeah, it seems a little niche for us, but we appreciate your submission. And I've never been published.
Hmm.
So then I just said, well, why am I fooling myself? Why don't I take these essays and just knuckle down and see if I could turn them into chapters? And uh, before I knew it, I had 3 chapters. And so I said, all right, I guess I'm doing this.
Nice. I think that's great, man. That's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah. I just did never been published, tried magazine articles and essays and online posts and enjoyed writing. And then, I just said, why am I fooling around with these articles? Let's just sit down and just do this. And
Hmm.
6 months later, I had 14 chapters. I said, well, what do you know? All right, let's call around some publishers.
That's really cool. I think you ought to consider also too in the future after you get this one out and get it rolling is maybe what you just shared with us, the human side of fire and how you can comfort families, maybe even like go into
Hmm.
that. Not telling you what to do, but I think
Yeah,
that would be good for people to hear.
I'm thinking once we get the full launch going,
Hmm.
to start seeing if I could parlay that into some public speaking, whether it's leadership training or
Hmm.
just fire seminars, or once again, things about uh, more of peace and purpose.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Do you have a like a favorite scripture from the Bible or a creed or a saying that you like or that you've used to kind of get you through hard times that you like to share with our audience?
I don't specifically from the Bible. Most of mm, the things that I enjoy from faith come from dealing with colleagues and their faith, or um, uh, and just dealing with peers and their life experiences. And then I've picked up phrases from them. And I picked up a phrase once, and I didn't intentionally do this, but I threw it out in a conversation where I was mentoring a young guy, and he is Muslim, and he was dealing with the thing. And he goes, yeah, I just dealing with this. I'm going to talk to the family. And I, I'm going to go to the mosque. I'm talking to my cleric. And Um, he goes, I just feel bad that I hope uh, I'm not in the crew's way, that I'm distracted by this or whatever. And I remember saying, no, we could all use more God in our life. And so it's a lot of phrases like that, separate from just Bible verses, that had a practical application to how we could go about our daily lives, that I've found just as powerful.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I just like to ask guests when they come on if there's like a certain creed or, some people like the saying stay the course or, things like that. Iron sharpens iron. That's a really big one because,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah,
Yes,
it's a
it
great
does.
Bible verse, but we hear that a lot.
Hmm.
And then, I'm my brother's keeper. That's a big one, especially
Yep.
in the first responder world. Well, where can our listeners and our viewers here on YouTube and the listeners on Spotify, where can they learn more about you, Mark, and how can they get a copy of your book when it's out?
I will send you the link to Amazon and Barnes and Noble. My paperback is out now. I'm kind of hoping the ebook is out in the next week or two, and then
Okay.
I'll send out a full press release with a full release. But they can get the paperback as of today, and so I will send you the link to add to the description.
Okay.
I've also got an Instagram page, Mark DBN Fire, and I've got some helmet cam on there. And when the book comes out, I'll then be posting links, and I would assume more than likely creating a separate Instagram account that I'll link to the main for just the author page.
That's awesome. Yeah. I've had a lot of firefighters on here, so it's cool to kind of pick your guys' brains because the old saying cops and firefighters don't get along.
And
At
it's
least not in my town.
and of course, yeah, because we get along great where we're at. We're really lucky.
Okay, nice. Yeah.
But I'm not in a major city. We're in a
Right.
big city, but we do kind of know each other. And so I
Yeah.
was always fortunate to just have such a great working relationship with our brother police officers. And speaking
Yeah.
of police officers, I loved the talk you did with John Martinez. That was such a good episode. Um,
He's an awesome guy. Yeah. I just went on his show on Saturday. The episode just came out yesterday. Yeah, the Good Leader podcast. Yeah, John's a really good guy. Yeah, he'd be a good one for you to go on.
We have already exchanged some
Nice.
messages, so
Nice, yeah.
we will see what the future has. He had a quote in your episode about you have to always be fighting the temptation of the devil, and it
Mhm.
reminded me of a quote from the actor Denzel Washington, and he
Mhm.
had said, um, "If the devil's not paying attention to you, you're probably in trouble because he likes what you're doing and wants to leave you alone. But when the devil's tempting you, it's because he sees you're a good person and he's trying to turn you.
Mhm.
So when fighting off temptation is so important to everybody, but especially what we do with first responders.
I agree 100%. Yeah, and Mark, since you opened that door, I'm gonna kick it wide open real quick. What is your take on spiritual warfare as a follower of Jesus Christ and the job you have and the scenes that you've seen and dealt with and the people you interact with? Do you feel like, in your life, especially in your career, have you ever felt an attack from the enemy? Is that something that you're, aware of or think about?
It isn't. And I wonder if it's just because I'm in a city of such high faith. There's two different major religions. Um, But what I've found common about whatever faith you believe in, our town knows there's a God and they know that he loves them.
Mhm.
And so I haven't had to face a lot of faith adversity where I'm from. It's been one of the great things about our city of Dearborn.
I always like to kinda ask people that. It comes up a lot in podcasts, but yeah, I'm real big on, spiritual warfare and,
Gotcha.
John and I talked about it obviously in our
Huh.
episode,
Yep.
but yeah. But yeah, I always like to
Yep.
kinda ask people,
I think I've just been fortunate.
yeah, yeah. And I think too, it also I know for me, I was raised in more of a legalistic church, so I always was aware of the enemy, but until I got older and went through some intense therapy sessions, then I really could understand more about spiritual warfare. And Eddie Penny was on the Sean Ryan show, and he talked about a book called Bondage Breaker, and that book really goes into great detail about it. And so I think
Okay.
just talking with you and hearing your story, I think the men that have chose to self sabotage, not in a career way, but more of like drugs, alcohol, whatever else you want to throw in there that YouTube will ban if we say it, that has kind of had an association with those attacks because it makes you feel less than. It makes you feel like you're not worthy of Christ. It makes you feel like you're in this like cloud of shame. So you're trying to stay away from God's.
They are temptations, that's for sure.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and especially as a first responder, we're like I said, um, it is very much like us in a social event to gather at that watering hole and have a couple of light beers. So that
Mhm,
temptation is there, but it's all about your self control and what the
mhm.
work you're going to put in to resist it.
It's a good point. You're 100% right. Yeah, and some of us struggle with that in our
Hmm.
careers.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, Mark, I'm gonna close this out in a prayer. Is there anything else you wanna add as we're coming to a close here on the show?
Not at all. This is a wonderful conversation, very enlightening on my behalf as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time tonight, brother. I really, really, glad you joined us and shared your story. All right, you ready to pray?
Yes.
Here we go. Father, thank you for today. Thank you for this podcast platform. And thank you for bringing Brother Mark on tonight to share his testimony and to just talk about his book and leadership in the fire service, but also, Lord, to put you in this episode and to talk about the human side of the first responder world. Mark is the first guest I've had to come on in the fire service to really just shed light on that, Lord, and to let us hear those stories of those families and the comfort and the peace that they feel with men like Mark with them while they're just in a situation that is so difficult and knowing that you're with them, God. Thank you for just everything you do for us. I pray you bless Mark and his family and bless his book that's coming out. Thank you for giving me this platform to not only spread awareness for men's mental health, but to spread your gospel, Lord. And I pray that everyone listening right now just knows, Lord, that you love them and that you will bring them peace, that you will bring them power, and you will bring them purpose in your lives, and that you are the only way home to the Father. And it's in your mighty name that I pray. Amen. Thanks for tuning in to the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button at the bottom so you don't miss an episode. I drop new episodes every Wednesday and every Thursday. We're also over on Spotify. Mark, I really appreciate your time tonight, brother. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. God bless you, man. I really appreciate you.